let's have a look at puddles where you've got things like farm tractors running in and out of puddles and creating deep ruts and tyre tracks. Now, not only these tyre tracks and the like very, very characterful in a picture, especially in the foreground, but it's also a very handy way of creating a lead into a picture. Right, now as you can see, I've done a very simple sketch here of a distant farm, some distant trees, and the track leading the eye through to the farm. And in the middle of the track, I've outlined very, very roughly where some puddles will form. I've also put in some fence posts because we can use those to create reflections in the water. Right, I'm just going to put a little bit of fresh water into the sky, but what I'm going to do is put a very watery wash of phthalo blue like that in the top of the sky. Towards the bottom of the sky, I'm going to put in a very, very pale wash of lemon yellow there like that, and that'll give a coolness to the sky because I want a sort of a slightly wintry effect. Now you can see I'm not bringing that lemon yellow anywhere near the blue in the sky, because if they hit each other you'll end up with a green sky that'll look somewhat seasick. What I'm going to do in fact is add a little touch of burnt umber to give a hint of some greyish sort of clouds. As I say, I don't want it to touch that lemon yellow, otherwise we're in trouble. The phthalo blue, which is a cool colour, and the lemon yellow, which is also a cool colour, give us a nice cool atmosphere to start off with. Right, now I've put in a mix, a very pale mix of much the same colour. It's really the blue and the brown mixed together and just blobbed in, and then when it's partially dry, just dabbed out very, very gently with the paper towel, and that gives a nice sort of hit and miss effect of distant trees that takes things right back to the distance. And that's fine, that's all we need as detail. It's sufficient for us to create a focal point that the eye is leading somewhere to. Right, next thing on the agenda is to fill in the field areas, and all I'm going to do here is use a pale sort of green, using mainly the lemon yellow. I'll add some burnt umber and touches of phthalo blue here and there. I don't want it too bright green because it is a winter scene. But what this will allow us to do is to leave some white streaks here and there. You can see those, and we can fill those in with a little bit of pale blue colour, as if the field was partially flooded with winter rains. The next thing we're going to do is to paint the whole of the farm track with a pale phthalo blue, because in effect we're going to be painting an upside down sky in the track to reflect what's up here. To give us an idea of where these brown streaks might end up in the path and the pale lemon yellow, let's have a look at this. There's approximately the distance of the sky, so if we reverse that and pull that down to there, you can see that these brown and blue areas here will appear, if anywhere, in these little puddles around about here. I'm putting in a wash of clean water. I've actually put a tiny drop of phthalo blue in, so it's just slightly tinted, purely so you can see what it is, but in effect pretend that's clean water. Right, now I'm going to let that soak in for a moment, but the sky that will be reflected in this part of the pool is way out of the picture here, so it can almost be any colour you want. Phthalo blue is in itself quite a strong colour, but we've got a fairly weak mix here, and because this is wet, it's going to dilute down anyway. And if you remember where these dark streaks are, if we drop that down there, it's just about the top edge of these puddles here. So we'll add a slightly darker streak of brown just about there. Oh yeah, and what I mustn't forget is to just put a few streaks of very pale blue wash around about this tone rather than this tone in these areas in the fields. I've got the very watery mix that I want to use in the far distant part of the track, because that's going to be a lot lighter than the stuff we're looking at around here, and generally following the line of the puddles. I'm not too worried here if I just go over the puddles in a slightly different shape than the pencil marks. The pencil marks really are only to give us a guide, but what I'm trying to do is to give that sort of line of the track so that you can see as of missing little flecks here, they can be added little sort of streaks of water. Okay, just a few streaks on the right hand side where you'd expect mud to be pushed up towards where the grass starts. And then you can see here I'm deliberately using the side of the brush to create that sort of hit and miss effect, because what I'm now doing, if you can see, is I'm deliberately taking one or two streaks into the puddle area from both directions. And this is important because this is representing where the puddles start getting deeper and the path, if you like, the track, the mud falls into the puddle and gradually disappears. The next trick is to start putting some light and shade and some dark, and in fact a few of the little representation of the tyre treads into some of these tracks. Now remember, the light, such as it is coming from the left, so if you can imagine a tyre track as being sort of a hollowed out shape, then the left hand side of the tyre track, in other words this side of the tyre track, is going to be in shadow, and this side of the tyre track is going to catch whatever light there is. Now the way we're going to achieve that sort of hollowed out track is by just putting a little touch of clean water down the left hand side of some of these areas of brown, and then adding a darker colour and letting it flood away. And let's see what happens. Now don't worry if it dries up as it has done here. What you can then do is, just by taking a slightly dampened brush, you can just, if you just get the edge of the dark paint and just drag it sideways. Right, now do you see the way I'm almost creating the tyre tracks as they go into the water, like that? Don't forget, as these mounds of soil and mud get pushed into the water, you'll also have a little bit of a reflection, and then taking some paint out, just streak that into the water like that, so we get a little bit of a hit and miss effect. I'll do it again to show you how I mean. I'm going to work my way around the puddles like that and just dampen off the edges, and then put some darker colour like that, so it looks like the mud around the puddles is still quite damp and quite wet, as it would be, of course. Burnt on, but that's straight out of the palette, that, and you can see that's given a lovely dark intense colour. You can just see the tractor splashing and bouncing its way through these puddles and creating yet another puddle for the water to run in. You can see these tyre marks disappearing into the water, and it's creating that its own sort of hit and miss effect, so it doesn't have to be a manufactured mark. Right, now you can see we're also just putting a few flicks of grass down the centre of the track. You can see if they're going up there, they've got to come back here as the reflection, like that. See, I've done gate posts, or fence posts rather, at various drunken angles, and that's really so we can just practice the art of putting these fence posts in at the right angle where the reflection is. Right, we're going to finish off with a quiz. Let's have a look, or ask ourselves, where will the reflections be for each of these posts and that bush, or will there be any reflections at all? Well, let's take this bush to start with. There's nothing there at all. There's probably just a little hint of a reflection there. This post here, there's just a little bit of a reflection, and maybe it'll just about reach down into there. That one's is too short, it's not going to reach any of that puddle. This one is going to be quite clear in view like that, and this one is also going to be in view like that to there, because it's set back a little bit from the path, or certainly from the puddle. This one, well, you may just catch the slightest touch of it just there, but it's hardly worth bothering with. This one is coming down here, you'll see nothing at all. That's about that long there. That'll actually reflect to about there, so we'll put that in like that. Right, we'll leave it at that now. I'm just going to strengthen a couple of those little bits of grasses. Don't forget, what goes up in water like that must come down. But looks very effective and very satisfying and very easy to do. All I've done is splayed out the brush. Away you go, have a little go at puddles. You can see they're not at all difficult to produce and give you a very convincing and very satisfying little picture.